Hey guys, this is day 2 of our interwar discussion, 1920s and 1930s, and kind of some important concepts between World War I and World War II. So we're going to do a quick history of European art. Renaissance is first, 1300s to 1500s, and you know that some estimates give it 1400s to 1600s. Famous artists of the Renaissance, which we talked about in history, are Da Vinci, Raphael, and Michelangelo. And there's an example from Michelangelo, Sistine Chapel, Da Vinci's Mona Lisa. Baroque, 1600s. Yes, I agree with that estimate. 1600s to 1750. Really famous artists in the Baroque are Rubens and Rembrandt. There's Rembrandt. Neoclassicalism, or neoclassicism sometimes. 1700s to 1750. Famous artists, Poussin, David. Got a lot of chiaroscuro, light and dark. And then we have realism, late 1700s, early 1800s. Painting everyday people and everyday commerce. Romanticism, early 1800s, famous artists Blake, Friedrich, Fuseli, Delacroix, Turner, Jerichois, early 1800s. And there's a Turner right there. Love Turner. Mid to late 1800s, we have Impressionism. Famous artists include Monet, Renoir, Manet. There's some famous paintings. Monet's lilies. And then Cubism, Dada and Surrealism of the early 1900s. And so you can see how art is going to kind of change. Picasso, art is going to seem more full of despair. If you notice the difference between this art and all the art that went before, Dali, Van Gogh, this art shows a bit of the melancholiness that we experience as a people of the world after World War I. Cézanne. So Cézanne is still Impressionist, a work of art which did not begin in emotion is not art, and he's encouraging us to express how we're feeling in the moment with art. Cézanne, I went to his art studio in France. Van Gogh, really wrestling even with depression and also joy in God's creation. Number 2, after 1900, and also think about effects from World War I, art becomes increasingly non-representational, abstract, and irrational. Number 3, modern art begins by painting real objects, but with primary attention to the arrangement of color, line, and form. So these are becoming less realistic. People can paint just as well as before, but now you know you're looking at a painting. You know you're not looking at a photo. So it's really emphasizing the color and the form. There's a painting of Paul Cézanne, self-portrait, and Pablo Picasso, a photo of him. And he really experienced the grief of the Spanish Civil War and other tragedies of the 1900s. Number 4, great artists included Paul Cézanne and Pablo Picasso. They're considered modern. Modern is really 1750 on, according to art standards. Cubism. So we've got like Braque and Picasso. Cubism contains broken up, think about war, and often abstract objects. It's like, what do we make of this? Usually the surfaces intersect at seemingly random angles, removing a coherent sense of depth. Cubism's distinct characteristic is the uncertainty of shapes. And you know, people after World War I are dealing with uncertainty of their future, of meaning. Picasso's work here. And Picasso says every child is an artist. The problem is how we remain an artist once we grow up. And I definitely agree with that. And I wonder what you think of it. Picasso's work, The Crying Woman, The Blue Guitar. God is, Picasso says, another artist. He invented the giraffe, the elephant, and the cat, kind of talking about this extreme creativity in our creator. Number 5, art developed towards the representation of pure form without reference to real objects. And Kandinsky really pushes this. He liked to paint like to music. Here are some Kandinsky works. Kandinsky, Roman numeral 2, the search for peace and political stability. The search for peace and political stability. International problems. So number 1, international problem number 1 is that Germany resented the Versailles Treaty's harsh terms and called it a diktat, which means an imposed settlement. Number 2, the U.S. rejected the Treaty of Versailles and followed a policy of isolationism.